I conquered empires of men, yet love conquered her. I walked into the velvet-lit lounge, heels clicking like a metronome keeping time with my heartbeat. Around me, billionaires laughed, whispered, and played their dangerous games, unaware that I had already seen through every tactic, every feigned charm. I had learned early that the world didn't hand out favors. It tested you, and if you survived, you became untouchable. America had not been gentle with me. An immigrant with nothing but sharp eyes and sharper wit, I had clawed my way into this life, building a fortress of pride and intelligence around me. I learned to be calm when the storms hit, to smile when fear whispered, and to move among men who thought power was theirs alone, as though I were nothing more than a shadow in their light. But no amount of luxury, no cocktail of admiration and wealth, could prepare me for the storm that love would bring. The one force I had never mastered, the one risk I had ignored. He arrived like a storm wrapped in silk. Victor. Even the name seemed to hum with danger and delight, a melody I didn't know I was meant to hear. He wasn't just handsome, he was the kind of man who could make a room pause. Dark hair, just long enough to brush his collarbone when he moved, eyes like polished amber that seemed to read through the finest mask I wore. His jaw was sharp, strong enough to hold secrets, and his smile, oh that smile, was both disarming and intoxicating. I first noticed him at a gala I attended to escape the loneliness that even luxury couldn't mask. Men and women in glittering gowns moved like constellations around me, but Victor didn't orbit. He collided. He approached me with that audacious confidence that is rare in men who know power as instinctively as he did. You handle people like chess pieces, he said, eyes locking with mine as if reading a secret I hadn't shared with a soul. His voice was velvet-edged with steel, commanding, persuasive, impossible to ignore. I laughed, a little startled. I survive by observation, I replied. Ah, he said, leaning closer, his cologne a mixture of dark wood, tobacco, and something magnetic I couldn't name. A woman who survives, that's far more dangerous than a man with power. I should have noticed the subtle hints, the twitch of his hand when he laughed, the way his pupils sometimes dilated too widely, too fast. But I was captivated. And I ignored the small warning signs. His hands occasionally trembled, the dark circles under his eyes hinted at restless nights, and there was a scent sometimes faint and chemical, that didn't belong to any cologne I'd ever smelled. He pursued me as if life depended on it, and for a week I allowed myself to believe it did. He sent flowers so extravagant they blocked the hallway at my apartment door. He called at odd hours, always with perfect timing, always with words that brushed against my soul like a whisper I didn't know I craved. Victor's charm was relentless. He could make a joke land in a frozen room, turn a critic into an admirer, and convince the stubborn to bend. Yet beneath it all, there was an intensity, a restless hunger, a darkness he never offered me in daylight. It was thrilling, intoxicating, and dangerous, but I believed it was love. On our third night together, we went out in a city that glittered like a jewel under the winter sky. He navigated the streets like he owned every lane, every honking car, every distracted pedestrian. The way he drove, fast and precise, made my pulse rise. I should have been cautious. I should have noticed the way his fingers fidgeted with the cigarette pack in his pocket, the subtle smell of something harsher than tobacco. But I didn't. I only noticed him. And that's how love began, not slowly but loudly. Victor loved loudly. His affection was a tidal wave sweeping me from my careful life, eroding the walls I had built, leaving me bare and dizzy with the thrill of being seen, being desired, being chosen. I didn't know then that some storms are not meant to pass quietly. Some men do not love, they consume. Some men hide the fire of their chaos behind a smile that can melt a fortress. Victor smiled at me that night, leaning so close I could feel the warmth of his breath. I will never let anyone hurt you, he whispered. And I believed him. I remember the day we exchanged vows as if it were a dream that had turned slightly dark at the edges. The chapel glittered with flowers and soft golden light, but my heart felt a strange chill beneath the lace of my dress. Victor stood there, taller than I remembered, his amber eyes burning with intensity as he held my hands in his. His grip was firm, reassuring, or so I told myself. Forever, he said. And I whispered it back, believing it meant safety. The first months were intoxicating. Victor loved loudly, adored lavishly, and praised me endlessly. I became addicted to the rush of being seen, celebrated, worshipped. Yet behind the gestures, the constant calls, the extravagant gifts, I began to notice little things that made my chest tighten. He decided where we would live, ostensibly for our safety. He rearranged my wardrobe to match his taste. He questioned who I met, why I laughed with them, subtly implying I was naive for trusting strangers. I told myself it was protection. I believed it was love. I ignored the way he always seemed to know where I was, who I was with, what I was thinking. "I only want what's best for you," he murmured one evening, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. But his hand lingered a moment too long, a little too tightly, and I flinched. He didn't notice or pretended not to. Dinner parties became exercises in social choreography. Victor would smile at me, eyes calculating, watching the men watch me, measuring their interest, adjusting his own control like a conductor guiding an orchestra. And I played along, enthralled by the illusion that he loved me more than the world. Isolation came not as chains but as a cloak of concern. "Your friends aren't the safest," he would say softly. "Your family doesn't understand us yet," he whispered at night, holding me close. And I believed him, stepping back from those I loved, shrinking my world to the apartment we shared, where his presence loomed like a golden sun I couldn't escape. The first time I realized I depended on him, I was alone in the kitchen making tea at 2 a.m., listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I thought about calling my mother but paused. Victor had said it might worry her. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her everything, but I realized I didn't know if I could do it without Victor's permission. I didn't notice the subtle tightening of his control at first. Small suggestions disguised as advice, gentle corrections disguised as concern. Yet each one pulled me closer into his orbit, away from friends, away from family, away from myself. And still I loved him. Because love, I learned too early, is often blind to its own cage. The first night we truly argued, it was about nothing. He had arranged a dinner with a man I barely knew, claiming it was important for my career. I had protested politely. He had laughed softly. "You trust me, don't you?" His amber eyes softened, his hand on my waist pressing lightly, almost lovingly. I nodded. And that nod chained me tighter than any argument could have. Victor loved loudly. And in that loud love he began to own me. The day Mila was born, the world seemed to pause. Sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds in long golden slats, dust dancing like tiny stars. Her cry was sharp, bright, and miraculous, and I couldn't stop staring at her small, perfect face. Victor was at my side, holding my hand, eyes glimmering with something I thought was pure devotion. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "She's perfect. Just like her mother." For a while it was bliss. Victor was the husband I had fallen for. The man who laughed at my bad jokes, who held me through labor pains like I was the most precious thing alive. He cooed over Mila, changed diapers, and sang lullabies in a voice that could melt steel. The neighbors and nurses remarked on his devotion. I told myself finally that love was enough. But shadows have a way of creeping into sunlight. First it was subtle. The brief flinches when I glanced at him during quiet moments. The way his hand would tremble slightly as he lifted Mila, or when he poured himself a drink and lingered too long in the kitchen. He called it exhaustion, the sleepless nights of parenthood, but something in my gut whispered otherwise. Then there were the times he disappeared for hours under vague excuses. Meetings, errands, urgent work. The scent he left behind one evening, bitter, chemical, made my stomach knot. I asked cautiously, "Are you?" "I'm fine," he interrupted, voice warm but too sharp at the edges. "I just needed a break. The baby's safe, isn't she?" I nodded. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust the man who had held my hand as I pushed Mila into the world. But as the days turned into weeks, the devotion I admired began to twist. He was a perfect father in public, a perfect husband in moments of light, but I could see the obsession simmering beneath the surface. He watched me carefully, tracking who I spoke to, where I went, how often I left the apartment. His eyes, once amber and soft, sometimes flared dangerously when I smiled at a delivery man or laughed too long on the phone. He became jealous of everything, not out of malice, I told myself, but because he loved too loudly, too fiercely. And yet he hid things. I discovered the first empty vial in his bathroom drawer by accident. Just a whisper of powder at the bottom. A residue he clearly hadn't noticed, or hoped I wouldn't. My heart sank. I didn't know whether to confront him or to turn away. Part of me still trusted him. Part of me feared what I would see if I looked too closely. Victor's love was a fire, warm, bright, consuming. But the fire also burned shadows into our life. I held Mila in my arms and thought about the future, about the man I married. Could a man so devoted also harbor darkness that would one day threaten everything I loved? I didn't know yet. But the shadow had begun to stretch. And I would soon realize that love, no matter how loud, cannot always protect you from the storms within the person you trust most. I used to believe that confidence could armor me against the world. That my intelligence and careful composure could shield me from the whispers of strangers. But I was learning painfully that love can unravel even the strongest of armors. At the charity gala that evening, the chandeliers glittered like 1,000 captured stars. I wore a dress that hugged my figure in all the right places, one I had chosen to remind myself of the woman I had fought to become. Victor arrived late as usual, slipping into the room with a presence that demanded attention. Heads turned. Eyes lingered. And yet, I felt invisible beneath the gaze of the women who circled us. They watched me. Not with envy, not with admiration, but with something sharper. Curiosity, judgment, the kind that pricked at the edges of self-worth. Victor, oblivious, or perhaps amused, placed his hand possessively on my waist. I tried to smile, to hold myself as composed, but their eyes bored into me like cold, calculated daggers. And then the flirting began. Not subtle, not hidden. Victor, the man who claimed love in every gesture, leaned into whispered conversations with other women, laughter curling from his lips like smoke. Each touch, each compliment was deliberate, teasing, and impossible to ignore. I told myself it was harmless, that these interactions were part of his charm, part of the social performance. But the pit in my stomach grew heavier with every glance. "Don't be ridiculous," I murmured to myself when a guest lingered too long in the doorway of my insecurities. Yet even as I repeated the mantra, doubt crept in. Did he truly love me? Did he even see me anymore? Or was I simply the centerpiece of his public stage? The whispers among the women were relentless. Some commented on my appearance, some questioned my abilities, some subtly implied that I was beneath him, that I had no right to the life I had carved out for myself. I fought the urge to retreat, to vanish into the shadows, but my pride, the very pride that had carried me through years of struggle, would not allow it. It was after the gala, in the quiet of our apartment, that the first real tension surfaced. A minor disagreement over something trivial, the arrangement of my things in the living room, turned into a storm I hadn't anticipated. His hand brushed mine in irritation, his voice rising, sharp and unexpected. "Why do you always question me?" he demanded, eyes flashing amber in the dim light. My voice faltered. I wanted to retreat, but something in his expression froze me. "It's stress," he said suddenly, softening, the anger dissipating as quickly as it had arrived. "I've had a long day. You know I don't mean it." I nodded, swallowing the tight knot of unease in my throat. Stress. That word became a shield for behavior I couldn't yet name. Stress for him, stress for us, stress that I was told to absorb, forgive, forget. But even as I lay in bed that night, Mila asleep in her crib, I could feel the first tremors of fear beneath the surface. Stress, yes, but I sensed the storm behind it, quiet now, waiting. And I knew somewhere deep down that it would not remain hidden for long. The women had watched, the flirtations had stung, and the shadows in Victor's love were beginning to take shape. I didn't yet know that stress would be the word that excused the first act of violence, an act that would leave its mark on my body and my soul and change everything I thought I knew about the man I married. The apartment no longer felt like a home. Its walls had absorbed our laughter, our whispers, our dreams, and now they held the echoes of tension, thick as smoke. Victor's presence had become unpredictable, a storm I could never anticipate. Sometimes he was charming, doting even. Other times his eyes burned with a quiet danger that made my skin crawl. Drugs had become his secret companion. I caught the faint acrid scent at odd hours, the bitter chemical taste that lingered on his lips, the jittery energy beneath his movements. I asked once cautiously, "Victor, what is that?" He laughed it off, smooth and silky. "Nothing. Just stress. You worry too much." I wanted to believe him, I truly did. But stress didn't make the windows rattle when he slammed them, or bottles fly across the room when he lost his temper over trivial things. Stress didn't make me lie awake at night, listening to the walls absorb his curses, his growls, his threats whispered into the dark. Violence became a language I learned to read. A slammed door meant he was unhappy. A thrown object meant I had failed. A harsh whisper meant I should be afraid. I learned to predict his moods, to keep the apartment calm, to smile when danger lurked behind his amber eyes. Neighbors began to notice. I heard the whispers when I stepped outside to get the mail, caught fragments through the walls. They're never quiet, it's always screaming. I don't know how she stands it. They should call the police. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But the truth was heavier than fear of him. It was the weight of our daughter, Mila, and the knowledge that Victor controlled everything that mattered. Papers, status, income, my ability to leave. One wrong step could unravel everything. And yet, the moments of tenderness kept me chained. Victor would cradle Mila, sing softly to her, brush my hair behind my ear as if no harm existed in the world. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to believe in the illusion of normalcy. Until the next incident. That night, I had dared to step outside for a brief walk just to breathe. Victor returned home late, eyes dark and dangerous. Where were you? His voice was calm, deceptively soft. But the hand that gripped my arm betrayed the calm he projected. I just needed air, I whispered. You belong here, he said, voice rising. Not outside. Not with anyone. He shoved me lightly, enough to unbalance me but not enough for anyone to notice. He smiled immediately after, brushing it off as jest as if the shove had been nothing. I'm sorry. Stress, he added casually, mimicking the phrase he used so often now that it had become a lie I no longer questioned. I sank to the floor for a moment, heart pounding, breathing shallow. My pride, my independence, my intelligence, they had not saved me. They could not protect me from the storm he carried inside himself. And yet I stayed. Because leaving was not simple. Because Mila needed her father, because the law and papers and status had become chains around my ankles, invisible but unyielding. Because survival, I had learned, was not just about strength, it was about endurance. The apartment smelled of smoke, fear, and bitter perfume. The walls held the echoes of what once was love, now twisted into obsession. And outside, neighbors whispered warnings I could neither act on nor escape. The house was burning, and I was trapped inside the flames. It started subtly. At first I thought I was imagining things. A flicker of movement behind the screen, a shadow lingering too long, the faint vibration of a message I hadn't sent. But soon the truth revealed itself. Victor's eyes were everywhere and my phone had become an extension of his control. He asked innocuous questions at first. Who was that? He'd say, glancing at my phone with an almost casual curiosity. I'd stammer, no one, just a friend. But his gaze lingered too long, calculating, patient. I felt my heart shrink under it. And then the accusations began. You're lying to me. You always lie. Don't think I don't notice. Each phrase was a knife disguised as concern. And I began to doubt myself. Had I forgotten someone? Missed a message? Did my memory slip, or was it simply the weight of his scrutiny that made me falter? He would scroll through my phone while I watched, calm as if it were his right. He never yelled. He never needed to. The fear he instilled was quiet, insidious, suffocating. Every notification became a potential accusation, every friend a potential betrayal. And when I confronted him once, trembling, exhausted from the mental gymnastics he forced me to perform, he smiled that infuriating magnetic smile and said, You're imagining things, love. You're stressed. I only want what's best for you, and for Mila. Gaslighting had become his art. I questioned my own sanity, replaying interactions in my head, trying to determine what was real. Each day I walked a tighter line, careful with every word, every glance, every click of the phone. My life was no longer my own. It had been rewritten in subtle strokes of fear and obedience. Even my mother's texts were scrutinized. Friends' messages became potential threats. Privacy, a concept I once held sacred, was now a memory. My phone, my lifeline to the world beyond our apartment, had been transformed into a leash. And yet, amidst all this, he maintained his charm. He could kneel beside Mila, sing her to sleep, and kiss my forehead with a tenderness that made me wonder if any of this, surveillance, suspicion, gaslighting, was my fault. Perhaps I had misread the signs. Perhaps I was paranoid. Perhaps he truly loved me. But deep inside, a small voice whispered a truth I could not ignore. Love that watches every move is not love. It is control. That night, as I lay awake in the dark, Victor asleep beside me, I realized something chilling. The man I thought was my protector had become my captor. And my world, the one I had built with pride and intelligence, was now fenced by fear I could not see, but could feel pressing against my chest. I no longer owned my phone. I no longer fully owned my life. And I wondered silently if I ever would again. I used to think chains were loud. Metal. Noise. Resistance. I was wrong. Chains can be paper thin. They can sit quietly in a drawer. They can smile at you from across a kitchen table. The first time Victor used my immigration status against me, it wasn't during a fight. It was during breakfast. Mila was in her high chair banging a spoon against the tray, laughing like the world had never known pain. Victor poured coffee slowly, deliberately, like a man with all the time in the world. "You should stop talking to lawyers," he said casually. My hand froze midair. "I wasn't." "You don't need to lie," he interrupted, still calm. Too calm. "I see things. Remember." He tapped my phone gently as if reminding it who it belonged to. My stomach tightened. He reached into a drawer and placed a folder on the table. Not slammed. Not thrown. Just placed. Inside were copies of my documents. My visa history. Forms I barely understood when I signed them years ago. Notices I had trusted him to handle. He had insisted, "Let me take care of it. You've been through enough." "You know," he continued, stirring his coffee, "if someone were to look closely at this, they might say you overstayed. Or misfiled. Or misunderstood the terms." I stared at the papers like they were a loaded gun. "That's not true," I whispered. He smiled. "Truth doesn't matter. Interpretation does." That was when fear changed shape. Before I had been afraid of his temper. Now I was afraid of the system, one I didn't fully understand, one he claimed to control. Deportation was no longer an abstract threat. It became vivid. Immediate. Personal. "I would never do that to you," he added quickly, reaching for my hand. "Why would I hurt the woman I love?" He squeezed just enough to remind me he could. "But if you leave," he continued softly, "if you make bad decisions, I can't protect you." I didn't pull my hand away. I couldn't. After that, the lies multiplied. He told me if I spoke to police, immigration would be notified. He told me shelters would separate me from my child. He told me judges favored citizens. He told me mothers like me lost everything. Each lie wrapped itself around my ribs until breathing felt like disobedience. And then he brought Mila into it. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Carefully. "You know," he said one night as he tucked her into bed, "if anything ever happened to you, she'd stay with me. I'm her father. I'm legal." Mila reached for me, sleepy and warm. My heart shattered quietly. That night I cried in the bathroom with the shower running so he wouldn't hear. I pressed my palm to my mouth and sobbed like a child myself, realizing something devastating. I was no longer staying because I loved him. I was staying because I was terrified. Every decision now passed through him. Every plan, every hope. My world shrank until it fit inside his approval. I began asking permission for things I once decided freely, errands, calls, even thoughts. And the most dangerous part? He would comfort me after he scared me. "You're safe," he'd whisper. "I'm the only one who protects you. The world is cruel to women like you." I began to believe him. By the time I realized my papers were weapons and my daughter was leverage, I was already trapped in a war I never agreed to fight. And Victor knew it. He had me exactly where he wanted me. That was when he made the offer. Not with anger. Not with threats. With a smile. "There's a way out," he said. "But you have to help me first." Victor did not raise his voice when he finally told me the truth. He didn't need to. The most dangerous revelations are spoken calmly. We were sitting at the small dining table, the one I once decorated with candles and flowers in an attempt to feel normal. Mila was asleep. The apartment was quiet in that unsettling way that makes your skin prickle, as though the walls themselves were listening. "There's something you should know," he said, folding his hands like a man about to offer help. I waited. "I don't just work in logistics," he continued. "I work for people who move outcomes." I looked at him confused. "What does that mean?" He exhaled slowly as if weighing how much truth I could survive. "It means I work for a Russian man you don't want to meet," he said. "And he's losing patience." The name followed. Not spoken loudly. Not dramatized. But the moment it left his mouth, something inside me recoiled. I had heard whispers before, at events, in half-finished sentences, in the way men stopped talking when Victor entered a room. "You're joking," I said weakly. Victor smiled. "I never joke about work." My stomach dropped. He stood and paced slowly like a predator rehearsing a hunt. "There's a man my boss wants. Powerful. Untouchable. He doesn't trust easily." I felt cold. "And he trusts women even less." That was when I understood. Not fully, but enough. "No," I whispered. Victor stopped pacing. He turned to me, eyes sharp, assessing. "You misunderstand. This is an opportunity." "For who?" My voice trembled. "For us," he said smoothly. "For you. For Mila." He explained the mission like a business proposal, stripping it of morality until it sounded almost reasonable. I was to arrange a meeting, suggest a journey, guide the man somewhere safe. "You're good at reading men," Victor said. "You always have been. They listen to you. They open up." I stared at him. "You want me to seduce him?" He didn't deny it. "I want you to survive," he corrected. The room felt smaller, thicker, like oxygen was being rationed. "My body is not yours to offer," I said, finally finding my voice. Victor laughed softly. "You think this is about ownership? This is about leverage." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "If you refuse, I can't protect you. Immigration will come. Mila will stay with me. You know that." There was. Not shouted. Not threatened. Stated. I felt something crack, not loudly but completely. "You never loved me," I said. He didn't argue. "I gave you a life," he said instead. "Now you give something back." That was the moment the illusion died. I saw him clearly, not as my husband, not as Mila's father, but as a man who measured worth in usefulness. A man who could sell anyone if the price was right. I agreed. Not because I wanted to. Not because I needed to. But because staying meant dying slowly, and leaving meant losing my child. Later that night he sent me the details. Names. Numbers. Routes. Instructions. I sat alone in the bathroom, the door locked, my hands shaking as I read them. My reflection stared back at me, beautiful, exhausted, terrified. Is this what I am now? I thought. A criminal? A weapon? Tears blurred the screen. I typed a response meant for Victor. A message born of panic, rage, and despair. And in my shaking, broken state, I sent it to the wrong man. I did not yet know the message had reached the very devil they feared most. But I would soon. Because black cars were already on their way. I broke quietly. Not with screams. Not with drama. I broke sitting on the bathroom floor, my back against cold tile, my phone glowing like an accusation in my trembling hands. The instructions Victor sent stared back at me. Names I wasn't meant to know, locations I wasn't meant to recognize, timelines that didn't allow fear or hesitation. Each word felt heavy, criminal, final. Arrange a meeting. Gain his trust. Let him somewhere safe. Safe. I laughed once, short, hollow, unfamiliar. My chest tightened. My breath shortened. I pressed my forehead to my knees, trying to slow the panic that roared through me like fire through dry leaves. This is my life now, I thought. This is what I have become. Tears blurred the screen. I wiped them away angrily, smearing mascara across my hand. I wasn't weak. I had survived worse than this. I had crossed oceans, built a life, raised a child. But this was different. I typed fast, recklessly, the way people do when they're drowning and grab at anything that looks like air. The message was meant for Victor. It was raw, furious, desperate. "You think I'm afraid? You sold me like property. I know your plan. I know who you work for. If anything happens to me or my child, everything burns." I stared at it, breathing hard. Then I hit send. The phone went still. For a moment nothing happened. The silence stretched. I exhaled, my heartbeat still racing, convinced the damage, whatever it was contained. Then my phone vibrated. Once. Twice. A chill slid down my spine. I looked at the contact name. Not Victor. The name was unfamiliar. Short. Clean. Heavy. I checked the number. My stomach dropped so violently I thought I might be sick. "Oh God," I whispered. I had sent it to him. The man Victor feared. The man the mission revolved around. The man whose name was never spoken loudly. The Mafia boss. My hands shook so badly the phone nearly slipped from my grip. I tried to unsend it. Tried to delete it. Tried to breathe. Too late. The read receipt appeared. The air in the bathroom felt suddenly thin, like oxygen had been drained from the room. I stood, dizzy, gripping the sink as the reality crashed over me. I just threatened a ghost. Adrian Kovac. Time slowed. Somewhere far away a car door closed. Then another. I heard engines. Low, synchronized, deliberate. I stepped toward the window. Black cars lined the street below like a quiet funeral procession. Men stepped out, suits immaculate, movements precise. No shouting. No chaos. Just certainty. My heart slammed against my ribs. This wasn't a mistake you apologized for. This wasn't something you explained. This was a summons. My phone vibrated again. A single reply. We have been looking for you. The world tilted. I slid down the wall, my knees giving way beneath me, the sound of my own heartbeat louder than the engines outside. Somewhere inside me, fear gave way to something colder. Realization. Victor hadn't just endangered me. He had handed me directly to a man who never forgot a face. And never ignored a challenge. The knock came moments later. Firm. Polite. I didn't scream. I didn't run. Because deep down I knew. My life had just crossed a line it could never return from. They did not touch me. That was the first thing that confused me. The men outside my apartment moved with precision, not force. One opened the door. Another stepped aside. A third inclined his head slightly, as though escorting a guest rather than claiming a captive. Please, one of them said quietly. Come with us. No shouting. No handcuffs. No violence. The car smelled of leather and restraint. The city passed by in silence, lights streaking the windows like memories I could not hold. My hands rested in my lap, trembling, yet no one restrained them. Fear still gripped me, but it was a strange fear, softened by the absence of cruelty. When we arrived, the building did not look like a fortress. It looked like power pretending to be calm. Inside, everything was hushed. Marble floors. Muted voices. Control disguised as elegance. They led me into a private office. He was standing by the window when I entered. So impossibly composed. The door closed behind me. He turned slowly. And for a moment, just one, I saw something break behind his eyes. He didn't speak. He studied me like a man staring at a ghost. His gaze moved carefully. My face, my posture, the way I held myself as if bracing for impact that never came. I felt exposed, not undressed, but seen. Too deeply. Then he stood. Every step he took toward me was measured, as though he feared sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile thing had seized him. I wanted to step back. I didn't. He stopped inches away. His breath hitched, barely audible, more a sound than a word. A quiet exhale weighted with memory. He lifted a hand, hesitated, then gently brushed his knuckles along my cheek. I flinched. He froze. Something in his expression shifted. Conflict, restraint, disbelief. Slowly, as if drawn by gravity he no longer controlled, he leaned in. Not to kiss. Not to claim. Just close enough that his face brushed mine, skin barely grazing skin. His eyes closed. I felt it then, the war inside him. Whatever memory lived there, it was not me. And yet, it was. I didn't know that my face mirrored another woman's. I didn't know that somewhere in his past lived a night unfinished, a betrayal unanswered, a woman who vanished with something he needed more than money. All I knew was that his body went rigid, as if resisting an instinct older than reason. Then just as suddenly he stepped away. He turned his back to me, drawing a hand down his face like a man waking from a dream he did not want. Without looking at me he spoke to the air. Take her to the east wing. That was all. Maids entered quietly. Their eyes were kind, respectful. They wrapped a silk robe around my shoulders as though I belonged there. The apartment they brought me to felt unreal. Soft lighting, warm water, scented oils. They bathed me like royalty, not prisoner. Dressed me in clean clothes. Served me food I barely touched. When night came I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, my body finally unclenched. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Terrified me. Then Mila's face flooded my mind. My daughter. My chest tightened. Where was she? Was she safe? Did she think I had abandoned her? Tears slid silently into my hair. Yet exhaustion won. I slept deeply, dreamlessly, like a woman whose war had paused if only for a night. I did not know why I was there. I did not know what he saw when he looked at me. All I knew was this. Power had taken me. Fate had mistaken me. And somewhere between fear and calm, something dangerous had begun. Breakfast was served as if nothing in the world were wrong. Crystal glasses. Soft music. Candles that burned without trembling. The calm was unsettling, too deliberate, too controlled. I sat at the long table alone for several minutes before he entered. He wore black. No jewelry. No excess. Power stripped to its bones. When he took his seat across from me, his eyes never left my face. "You don't remember me," he said finally. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "I've never met you." The slightest flicker crossed his expression, disappointment or disbelief. He leaned back, studying me more closely now, as if searching for cracks in my certainty. "You say that easily," he murmured. "She said it once too." My fingers curled against the linen. She. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he lifted his glass, turned it slowly in his hand, watching the light bend through it like memory bending truth. "It was years ago," he began, voice low. "One night. No names. No future. Just fire." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. Not desire but warning. "She walked into my life like she owned it," he continued. "Fearless. Intelligent. Beautiful in a way that doesn't ask permission." I felt suddenly cold. She studied me while pretending not to. She drank slowly. Asked questions that mattered. And when the night ended, his jaw tightened. She drugged me. My breath caught. She took my suitcase. Money meant nothing. But inside it, he stopped. His eyes hardened. Was a document I needed to stay alive. Silence swallowed the room. "She disappeared," he said. "No trail. No mistake. I searched for years." His gaze locked onto mine. "Then I received a message yesterday." My heart pounded. "And I found you." I shook my head slowly. "You're wrong. I've never done any of that. I've never met you. I swear." I meant it. Every word. He stood abruptly, circling the table like a predator refusing to accept its prey had changed shape. "You look like her," he said softly. "The same mouth. The same eyes. Even the way you hold your fear, quietly." I stood too, my legs unsteady. "Looking like someone doesn't make me her." He stopped in front of me. "No," he agreed. "But fate has a cruel sense of humor." His obsession was no longer confusion. It was focus. Dangerous, consuming focus. Not lust alone, not revenge alone, but the kind born when a man believes destiny has finally answered him. "You don't know who you are to me," he said. "And you don't know who I am," I replied, my voice shaking but firm. Something shifted then. Not anger. Interest. "You're telling the truth," he said slowly. "Which makes this complicated." I exhaled, dizzy with relief and dread. "I don't want your money," I whispered. "I want my daughter." That stopped him. His expression softened, just enough to reveal the man beneath the myth. "You wear no ring," he said quietly. "You carry motherhood in your eyes. Not guilt." I nodded. Tears burned. "I was sent to trap you," I confessed. "By my husband. By his boss." I never agreed until I had no choice. The room seemed to tilt. He listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't judge. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, decisive. "You are not her," he said. "But you are no less dangerous." He turned away, staring out the window at a city that obeyed him. "And now," he added, "you are under my protection." My heart raced. Protection from whom? From my husband? From the Russian boss? Or from the man standing in front of me, who wanted me not for what I'd done but for what I represented? As the servants cleared the table, I realized something terrifying and undeniable. I had not escaped one cage. I had entered another, lined with silk, power, and obsession. And this one might be impossible to leave. Dinner that night was quieter. No long table. No audience. Just the two of us, seated near the window where the city glittered like a promise that had already learned how to lie. He dismissed the staff with a glance. The door closed softly behind them, sealing the room in a hush that felt intimate and perilous all at once. "You're trembling," he said. I hadn't realized I was. "I don't know what I am to you," I replied. And that frightens me. He studied me for a long moment, then poured wine into my glass without asking. The sound was slow, deliberate, like time itself had chosen to linger. You are a contradiction, he said. And contradictions disturb men like me. I lifted the glass, hands unsteady. Then why keep me? Because, he said, eyes darkening, you don't beg. That startled me. I've seen fear, he continued. It performs. It bargains. It lies. You hold yourself together even when you're breaking. His words slid beneath my skin, unsettling in their accuracy. I took a sip of wine. It burned softly, warming places I'd forgotten could still feel. You speak like you know me, I said. I know restraint, he replied. And you practice it like survival. He leaned closer, not touching, not yet. Close enough that I could smell him. Clean, restrained, dangerous in the way calm water hides depth. For a moment I forgot who he was. For a moment I remembered who I used to be. I haven't been taken to dinner like this in years, I confessed. Not since before my marriage collapsed into silence. Something passed over his face, regret perhaps. Or recognition. Then tonight, he said quietly, you are not someone's wife. You are not bait. You are not a mistake. He paused. You are a woman. My chest tightened. No one had spoken to me like that in so long, without ownership, without expectation. Confusion bloomed. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to run. I wanted to forget my fear and remember desire. All at once. His fingers brushed the back of my chair, accidental, restrained, yet electric. I felt it like a question left unanswered. Why do you look at me like that? I asked, my voice barely steady. Because, he said honestly, I am trying not to want you. Silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. I laughed softly, the sound unfamiliar. You're very powerful, I said. Surely you can have anything. His smile was faint. Dangerous. Power doesn't protect you from obsession. It only gives it space to grow. That frightened me more than any threat. When dinner ended, he stood and offered his hand, not commandingly, not possessively. Just there. I hesitated. Then placed my hand in his. His touch was warm. Steady. Not claiming but not letting go either. Sleep, he said. Tomorrow we talk about your daughter. Hope pierced me so suddenly it hurt. As I returned to my room, heart racing, mind spinning, one truth settled deep in my bones. This was no longer about mistaken identity. This was about choice. And the most dangerous seduction of all was not his touch. It was the safety I felt in his presence. Morning did not rush me. It arrived softly, like a witness afraid to interrupt a confession. Sunlight crept through sheer curtains, touching the edges of a room that did not belong to me, yet held me more gently than my own home ever had. I sat at the edge of the bed, my daughter's face rising in my mind like a prayer I could not silence. By the time he summoned me, I was ready. Not brave but done hiding. His office was quieter than the night before. No guards in sight. No display of dominance. Just him standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back as if holding the weight of decisions already made. You asked to speak, he said without turning. Yes. My voice surprised me, steady, stripped of fear. He gestured to the chair opposite him. I did not sit. If I sit, I said, I might soften the truth. And today I cannot afford mercy. That made him turn. His eyes met mine, sharp and patient. Then speak. I drew a breath that felt like breaking a seal inside my chest. My husband, I began, is not the man he pretends to be. A faint smile touched his mouth, not amusement but expectation. He works for a Russian, I continued. Not a businessman. Not a fixer. A butcher who wears suits and calls it order. I watched his face carefully now. Every word mattered. He came to me after the police reports, I said. After the neighbors called. After the bruises learned how to hide. My throat tightened but I pressed on. He told me I could leave, I said bitterly. Then he showed me the chains. I told him everything. The paperwork locked in drawers I was never allowed to open. The threats spoken softly as if kindness made them cleaner. The lies about deportation. The warnings that my daughter would forget my face if I tried to run. He didn't raise his voice when he said it. I whispered. That's how I knew it was real. Silence filled the room, heavy but attentive. He offered me freedom, I went on. But not mine. Yours. That caught him. He wanted me to earn your trust, I said. To arrange a meeting. To suggest a journey. To bring you somewhere safe. I laughed then, thin, broken. He said my beauty was an asset. That men like you listened when women smiled. Something dark passed through his eyes. And if I refused, he asked quietly. He said he would bury me in paperwork, I replied. And raise my daughter without me. I finally sat. I agreed, I said. Not because I believed him, but because I was already drowning. The room felt colder now. That message I sent, I added, was never meant for you. It was meant for him. Proof that I was obeying. He said nothing. So I told him the message. Every word. He's suspicious. I can get him to travel. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere he'll trust me. Just tell your boss when and where. I'll make sure he comes alone. The words hung between us like a loaded weapon. I sent it in panic, I said. I didn't check the name. I didn't think. He moved then, slowly, deliberately, until he stood before me. You didn't expose me, he said. You exposed him. I looked up at him. So now you know. Yes, he replied. Now I know who betrayed you. His voice hardened, not toward me but away from me like a door closing on something violent. You were never bait, he said. You were currency. Tears slipped free then, not loud, not dramatic. Just truth leaving my body. I loved him, I admitted. I ignored every warning because I believed love required endurance. Adrian Kovac knelt in front of me, lowering himself so our eyes were level. That was not love, he said. That was captivity disguised as devotion. Something in me cracked open. And now? I asked. He held my gaze, unwavering. Now, he said, you belong to no one who would trade you. I shook my head. He won't stop. I know, he replied calmly. The calm frightened me more than rage. You have told me the truth, he continued. And in my world truth has weight. He stood. Your husband has declared war, he said. He simply didn't know it yet. As I was escorted back to my room, my legs trembled, not with fear but with the realization that the moment I spoke the truth, everything changed. I had crossed a line. And betrayal, once named, never stays quiet for long. Night fell quietly over the city, but inside the apartment, the air thrummed with tension I could no longer ignore. Adrian Kovac entered the room silently, not with dominance, but with the calm authority that made my heart race. The lights were dim, candles flickering shadows across the walls. I felt exposed yet somehow safe, a contradiction I didn't understand. You shouldn't be alone, he said softly. Not a command. A statement. I'm not afraid, I whispered, though the truth trembled beneath the words. He stepped closer and for a moment the world narrowed to the space between us. I could feel his warmth, smell the faint scent of his cologne, clean yet intoxicating. My pulse raced, my thoughts scattered. You've been through too much, he said, voice low and steady. You need someone to hold you. Not just physically but, in every way you've been abandoned. His hand brushed mine, lightly, almost accidentally, but it sent a shiver straight through me. I wanted to pull away but I didn't. My body leaned in despite my mind. I don't know if I can trust anyone, I admitted. He smiled, not teasing, not condescending. Just understanding. You can trust me. For tonight at least. Let me keep you safe. That safety so rare and foreign loosened something inside me. I let my hand rest against his, lingering, and his fingers closed gently around mine. Then without warning he leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a soft, questioning kiss. Not urgent. Not possessive. Just there. A spark, electric, igniting all the fire I had buried for months. I responded instinctively, letting my lips meet his, exploring, testing, surrendering to the forbidden comfort his presence promised. His hands moved slowly along my arms, tracing curves and lines as if memorizing them, his touch firm yet tender. I could feel the tension in his body, restrained, controlled. Yet his restraint only made the moment more combustible. His mouth found my neck, soft nips and whispers of heat that made my skin ache to feel more. Stop? I asked, breathless. No, he said softly. I'm not stopping. Not yet. And then he guided me back against the couch, letting me sink into him. My hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, needing to feel every inch of him, knowing this closeness was dangerous. But the danger was part of the allure. The city outside faded. There was no husband, no mafia boss, no threat, just us. Two people stitched together by fear, by trust, by desire, by the recognition of kindred wounds. Hours passed in silent exploration, whispered confessions and gentle dominance. He learned my limits, I learned his. Each movement was a conversation, each touch a declaration of something deeper than lust. A bond forged in secrecy and survival. When it was over, we lay together in the darkness, the city lights casting a soft glow across our bodies. I felt his arms around me, steady, protective, and for the first time in years, my chest rose and fell without the weight of terror. "You're safe," he whispered, pressing his forehead to mine. "And not just tonight. I will make sure you stay safe." I closed my eyes, letting the warmth seep in, knowing that this night had changed everything. Passion had become a shield. Desire had become protection. And in the dark I finally believed that together we could survive anything. I did not know she existed. Not yet. But somewhere across the city, a woman was living inside my reflection, wearing my face like a disguise that had already ruined men more powerful than my husband ever dreamed of being. Her name was never spoken with kindness. Only fear. Rina Sokolova. She had studied men before she ever touched them. My mannerisms. My silence. My restraint. She understood something most women didn't. Men like Victor and his boss, Mikhail Orlov, did not fall for loud beauty. They fell for control disguised as softness. She arrived the way I once did, unannounced, unafraid, perfectly timed. Victor saw her first. She was stepping into a car when he froze. For one terrible second his breath caught in his throat. My wife, he thought. But then doubt flickered. Something was wrong. He turned and smiled. Not my smile. Sharper. Hungrier. "Where are you going?" Victor asked, confused, stepping closer. She tilted her head. "Home." He reached for her wrist. "You need to come with me." She resisted briefly. Not enough to escape, just enough to provoke curiosity. "My boss wants to meet you," Victor insisted. "We have business." She hesitated. That hesitation saved her life and sealed her fate. Inside the building something was already wrong. Victor's boss wasn't answering. No guards. No music. No laughter. Silence. They forced the door open and found him on the floor. Alive but emptied. The room smelled of chemicals and blood and betrayal. Victor turned slowly toward her. The bag fell from her shoulder. Money spilled across the floor like confession. That was when the truth arrived. They didn't ask questions. They already knew. She fought. She screamed. She lied. But she had underestimated men who only worshipped power. They took the money back. Every cent. Then they took something else. Her freedom. Days passed in a room without windows. She was beaten, not brutally but deliberately. Enough to teach obedience. Enough to erase defiance. They didn't destroy her face. They needed it. My face. They learned everything. How she researched men. How she seduced them. How she drugged them. How she vanished. She had done it before. She would do it again. For them. Victor stood over her one night, studying her bruises with detached interest. "You'll fix this," he said. "You'll be my wife." She laughed, broken. "She'll know." "She'll never see you," he replied calmly. They dressed her in my clothes. Taught her my habits. Fed her my history. And then came the cruelest demand of all. She was to appear before my family. My parents. My cousins. My daughter's caretakers. She would answer questions. Smile softly. Reassure them I was fine. My child. My child would stay hidden. Used. Leverage. That night, as she stood in front of a mirror, my face staring back at her through swelling and fear, she whispered something I felt across the city like a wound reopening. I should have taken a different face. She didn't know it yet. But the moment she wore my life, she sealed her own end. Because somewhere else, the man who loved me in silence was already hunting the truth. And no one survives long wearing another woman's destiny. Children know. Not facts. Not secrets. But shifts. My daughter knew something was wrong the moment the woman wearing my face held her hand. She didn't cry. She didn't pull away. She simply looked up and frowned, confused in the way only children are when truth and appearance do not align. "You smell different," she said. The woman stiffened. "I used new soap," she replied quickly, smiling too hard. My daughter tilted her head. "Mommy doesn't change soap." That night she didn't sleep. She lay still beside the woman pretending to be me, her small body tense, listening for a heartbeat that felt familiar. It didn't. The next morning she refused to eat. "She's just tired," Victor told my family over the phone. "It's been a difficult week." But children do not grow tired from weeks. They grow tired from lies. My daughter began asking questions no one wanted to answer. "Why do you forget my stories? Why do you hold my hand like that? Why don't you hum when I cry?" The woman tried to learn me quickly. But love cannot be rehearsed. My daughter stopped calling her mommy. She started saying you. The word cut deeper than any accusation. When she woke screaming from nightmares, she reached for safety that wasn't there. And the woman knew. She knew she had failed the one test that could not be cheated. Somewhere across the city I woke up gasping, my chest tight, my hands shaking, as if my child had called out and my body answered before my mind could. I pressed my palm to my heart. "She knows," I whispered. He was beside me instantly. "How?" he asked. "She's quiet," I said. "That's how." He understood. Children scream when afraid. They go silent when betrayed. Back in that borrowed house, my daughter sat on the floor with her dolls, lining them up carefully. "This one is mommy," she told the woman, pointing to a doll with dark hair. Then she pointed to another. "And this one is pretending." The woman swallowed. "What happens to pretending people?" she asked softly. My daughter didn't hesitate. "They go away." That night the woman cried alone in the bathroom. Not because she was sorry, but because the child saw through her. And children are the only witnesses who cannot be bribed. When Victor realized what was happening, his anger rose, not toward the woman but toward the risk. "She's asking too many questions," he snapped. "Fix it." "I can't," the woman said. "She doesn't feel me." Victor's voice dropped. "Then we accelerate." And that was when the fractures became breaks. Because the moment my daughter knew, time stopped being neutral. And everyone who loved her became dangerous. The image arrived first. My daughter. Alive. Terrified. The world tilted. I remember standing, then nothing. I would have fallen if Adrian Kovac hadn't caught me. Strong arms locked around my shoulders, firm and grounding. He held me upright as my body shut down, my breath leaving in broken gasps. "Stay with me," he said calmly, his voice cutting through the noise in my head. "You cannot leave now. She needs you awake." I clutched his coat like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "They took her," I whispered. "I know," he replied. "And they want time." The meeting place was a hidden valley, stone, fog, and silence. A place chosen not for mercy but for control. He arrived alone. No visible weapons. No raised voice. He walked forward, then slowly lowered himself. On his knees. Polite. Respectful. A move so unexpected it unsettled everyone watching. "I come without resistance," he said evenly. "Because this is not a war. This is a transaction." Mikhail Orlov studied him carefully, amused. "You kneel for a child?" he asked. "For time," he answered. "The child comes with it." Far away, just miles from the valley, I waited with shaking hands beside an empty car, my heart breaking itself open with every passing second. His men were already in motion, unseen, silent, exact. Time was being spent carefully. Adrian Kovac lifted his head slightly. "I bring you an offer," he continued. "A diamond that will place your name among the most honored lineages. And a document you believe I destroyed." Mikhail Orlov leaned forward, intrigued. "My life, Adrian Kovac, added in exchange for the girl." Pause. Then, movement. Victor stepped forward and gave a sharp signal. "No, this is not the plan." Mikhail Orlov turned his head slowly. And without a word, he shot him. One clean movement. No interruption. No hesitation. The body fell unacknowledged. Adrian Kovac did not flinch. "Bring the child," Mikhail Orlov said. The exchange happened fast. Too fast for regret. The girl was released, hands shaking, eyes wild, and taken immediately by waiting men. No shouting. No cruelty. Just efficiency. Minutes later she was in my arms. I dropped to my knees in the dirt, holding her so tightly she cried out, and then buried her face in my chest. "I'm here," I kept saying. "I'm here. I'm here." She was taken to a private hospital immediately. Medication. Warm blankets. Monitoring. I watched her sleep, safe through tired eyes. And through a small device embedded in his body I watched him. Still calm. Still kneeling. Only after the child was confirmed safe did he stand. Adrian Kovac diamond was handed over. The document too, its duplicate form worthless without the original termination, though they didn't know it yet. Then the alert sounded. Explosion imminent. Evacuate immediately. Panic erupted. Men scrambled. Vehicles roared. But there was no bomb. Only fear. Only time spent wisely. Walked away untouched. No explosion came. No one died. Because the most powerful weapon that day was not violence. It was patience. Irina Sokolova did not scream when they took her. She had already learned that screams were useless currency in rooms like these. Adrian Kovac's men brought her in at dawn, clean, controlled, without brutality. She was placed in a chair under a single light, her hands free, her face untouched. She looked around slowly. "So," she said hoarsely, "he finally found me." Adrian stood across from her, unreadable. "You wore another woman's life," he said calmly, "and nearly buried a child with it." Irina swallowed hard. "I never meant to hurt the child," she whispered. "I only wanted to disappear." Her voice cracked, not performance, not seduction. Just exhaustion. "I have a daughter too," she said suddenly, panic rising. "She's waiting for me. She doesn't know where I am. Please." Adrian raised a hand. "I don't kill mothers lightly," he said. "But I do kill liars." Tears spilled down her face. "The document," she blurted. "I didn't destroy it. I hid it. Somewhere safe. I can give it to you." Silence. Adrian studied her closely. Not her beauty, not her resemblance, but her fear. "Where?" he asked. Irina exhaled shakily. "A safety box. Zert. Under my real name." His men moved immediately. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a nod. "It's real," one of them confirmed. "Original. Active." Irina collapsed forward, sobbing. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she cried. "I seduced powerful men because power never listens unless it desires you. I took their money because money erases you if you're careful." She looked up at Adrian. "But I never wanted to become someone else's face." Adrian turned away. "Take her," he said. Irina froze. "Where?" "Out," he replied. "Far from here. New papers. One chance." She stared at him in disbelief. "You're letting me go?" "For the child," he said quietly. "Not for you." Irina nodded rapidly, tears streaming. "Thank you. I swear." "Disappear," Adrian interrupted. "Completely." She was escorted out. And that chapter of my life, my stolen reflection, ended. Mikhail Orlov believed power came from fear. Adrian Kovac knew better. Power came from control. And love, when protected by patience, was the most dangerous force of all. Time returned to me slowly. Not all at once. Not kindly. It came back in breaths I no longer counted, in nights my body stopped waking before my mind, in the way my daughter slept without reaching for me in panic. Molly healed faster than I did. Children always do. She forgot the machines first. Then the fear. Then the faces. But she remembered one thing. Him. "Is he coming back?" she asked one afternoon, tracing circles on the hospital blanket. I looked at her gently. "Who?" "The man who made the bad people go quiet." I smiled for the first time without effort. "Yes," I said. "He's coming back." Adrian Kovac did not rush his ending. He never had. While the world believed the Valley incident ended in chaos, paperwork moved silently across borders. Accounts closed. Names dissolved. Threats disappeared not through violence but irrelevance. Mikhail Orlov survived. But survival without leverage is its own punishment. The diamond he received tied him to powerful lineages, yes. But the document was useless without the original termination. The truth surfaced too late. For the first time, Orloff was powerful and cornered. Adrian walked away clean. My legal captivity ended on a Tuesday. No drama. No courtroom spectacle. Just a signature. My status restored. My name protected. My daughter untouchable. I stared at the paper for a long time before signing. Freedom looked smaller than I imagined. But it felt heavier. That night Adrian came home. Not as a king. Not as a savior. As a man. He stood in the doorway while Sophia ran into his arms, laughing, unafraid. She missed you, I said quietly. He looked at me. So did I. Later, when the house was still, he sat beside me, not touching, not claiming. Just present. You can leave, he said. If you want. I studied him. The power. The patience. The restraint. I know, I replied. That was the difference. I stayed because I chose to. I once believed love meant endurance, I said softly. That if I stayed long enough, it would stop hurting. Adrian listened. I was wrong, I continued. Love is clarity, safety, silence without fear. He reached for my hand, not possessive, not demanding. Just there. You survived, he said. No, I corrected gently. I lived. Mila fell asleep between us that night. And as I watched her breathe, I understood something at last. Time is not measured in years. Or losses. Or scars. Time is life. And life, when reclaimed, is the most dangerous freedom of all. Thank you for staying till the end. If you felt this story, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You're part of this journey now.